Now I have to hand you back to studio for the rest of the programming here on Morning at NTV.
Thank you very much, Stephen Mbide, reporting.
Into the second half of the 8 o'clock hour here in Morning at NTV. You are most welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And those of you that have been with us since the beginning of this ride, asante sana. My name is Priscilla Regina Naloga. Into our tech note this morning, we get to look at harnessing Uganda's demographic dividend. The backbone of it being that Uganda's vision of 2040 recognizes the rapid population growth, young age structure, and the consequent high child dependency burden as the main threats to the achievement of the envisaged socio-economic development. However, you do have the vision document underscoring harnessing the demographic dividend as instrumental in facilitating socio-economic transformation, one by turning the erstwhile population burden into an asset. Now, the larger working age population, if properly nurtured, can enable a country such as Uganda increase its GDP and raise incomes. I am joined by Samson Omwa, who's the Director of Monitoring and Evaluation with the National Population Council, to give us enlightenment into the demographic dividend and how we can benefit from it to actually visualize Uganda 2040. Good morning to you. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Priscilla. Good morning. Good morning, our viewers.
Okay. First of all, give us a brief overview of the National Population Council and what its mandate is.
Yeah, thank you, Priscilla. National Population Council started as what we used to call then the Population Secretariat. And in 2014, an act was made and it became a National Population Council. It's the principal government agency responsible for coordinating the implementation of the National Population Policy and Population Program. We have a vision to be a hub of distinction for promoting and integrating population policies and programs in Africa. Our mission basically is to improve the quality of life of the people of Uganda by influencing, I underline that, by influencing government policies and programs to mainly address population patterns and trends for an inclusive and sustainable development. That's the mission. But what we do principally, as I've already mentioned, coordinate the country population policy and program, develop the country population policy and the strategies like the demographic dividend roadmap. We do commission strategic research in line with our advisory role in terms of population and programming. And basically, remember I've mentioned our mission is to influence the population trends. So we do this by making sure that all our development planning frameworks, the development plans, the annual work plans and budgets, the policy statements address or integrate population issues. So we do this through what we call integration and mainstreaming. Okay. Basically, that's the what National Population Council, it's an agency under the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development.
Okay. In that relation, as experts, what would you consider to be Uganda's main population problem?
Yeah, thank you. Uganda's main population problem, I can summarize them into two. One is the rapid population growth. As a country, our population growth rate currently stands at 3%. This is high, and we feel we should look at mechanism of managing this, as we shall later see in our discussion and this conversation. And then secondly, this has led into what we call a youthful age structure. We have so many young people. If you look at what we call the population pyramids, it's like a pyramid. The base is broad, and that shows you the extent to which we have the young population. And the middle is not broad, is not wide, and the top we have the elderly. So our population structure, if you look at 14 years to 0, those are dependents, and then from 15 to 64, that's the working age, which is quite few, and then about 3% of our population are elderly. Now, that population structure is not conducive for development. One, there is high dependency burden. Now, both at individual and at country level, this dependency burden stifles our ability to save and invest and develop the economy or grow the economy. Then the other issue is this dependent population places a lot of pressure in terms of providing primary education. You will find that the teacher-pupil ratio, the pupil textbook ratio, you go to health, the doctor-patient ratios, and so on. So this, in a way, inhibits the population's capacity to access adequate health and education services. Of course, you look at now the challenge we have, the issue of unemployment. We have quite annually our education institutions, the tertiary institutions, are churning out graduates, but our economy is not growing to an extent of absorbing them. So this high population growth with this unfavorable population age structure is what we as National Population Council trying to drum about so that we have a more sustainable development.
Okay. Now, speaking of development, harnessing the demographic dividend is recognized by the National Development Plan, which is on stage 3, and one of the strategies of achieving this Vision 2040. Can you explain to us this demographic dividend concept, how it actually buys into the population growth?
Yeah, thank you, Priscilla. The demographic dividend is a concept that I can simply put the economic benefit that you get from the country's population. It's the benefit that you have that as a country, and then it leads to economic growth and development. Basically, it's a concept that we have borrowed from the Asian tigers. We look at the ways the Asian tigers were able to develop within a span of 30 years. So gradually, this concept stems from the fact that if you look at, we had earlier on talked about the population age structure. Now, what has happened within our population planning and programming is that we have had a total fertility rate decline. That means the age structure is changing from having very fewer dependents to having a very big bulk of the working age population. Now, that working age population is what we are referring to as the demographic dividend. If they are well educated, if they have good health, and within the sound economic policies the government provides, they should be able to invest, grow the economy, grow the GDP, the national output, and then we have that improved quality of life. So in essence, the demographic dividend is what we are talking of as the economic benefits that accrue out of the population's, out of the country's population program. But it's not automatic. There are certain preconditions that we must fulfill. And one of them is that we should have sound economic policies in place that ensures there is investment. The government should invest substantially in terms of infrastructure to give that base for us to operate. And then you have to invest in education. This population, we are calling them a dividend if they are well trained, well skilled, with the skills that our economy requires. And of course, we need to have good governance so that the little that we are doing in terms of service delivery are directed to what they're actually to do. So in essence, the demographic dividend is that benefit that comes out of having a large working age group and contributing to the growth of the economy in terms of investing and growing the gross domestic product.
Okay, Mr. Omwa, this begs the question, what are then the priorities of harnessing this dividend?
Yeah, I've kind of highlighted some of the priorities, but for us to, because we said the demographic dividend is not automatic. Now, one of the priorities is the issue to do with education, making sure that we have an inclusive education programs running right from primary to tertiary. Also, we should have a very robust vocational, technical, and vocational training programs in place so that this population, the young people, acquire the adequate skills. The reasoning behind this is that if you, let's say, because these tend to have influence in terms of our fertility rate and so on. If you are educated, probably will you'll marry late, start childbearing late. So this, in a way, and then if you're educated, you are empowered and you can take charge of your own life, make decisions. Then, of course, the issue of health, we need a healthy population. And you know, if you are not healthy, then it also affects your production or your productivity, because all the time you are down. So health is very important. Of course, the issue of gender equality, the issue of making sure that there is equal access to opportunities for both boys and girls, men and women, so that we all have these empowered communities. And as I've mentioned, of course, the other priority is about having strong governance and institutions in place to make sure that services are delivered and intended to the main population. Okay. But let me just revert back to health. Of course, the health, we are concerned mainly here with issues to do with reproductive health. And you could even look at it as adolescent sexual and reproductive health rights and services, issues to do with access to family planning, because we know the high fertility rate is also attributable to the contraceptive prevalency rate. So those are, in a nutshell, the strategies that we, as the country population program, are trying to address using the multi-sectoral or multi-stakeholder approach.
Okay, you have talked about health and education. Those two are struggling right now in this whole budget process. Budget cuts are left, right, and center for them, not appeasing to the priorities of harnessing the demographic dividend. So what mechanisms are being put in place to ensure that this dividend actually ties and is integrated into the national development plans? It's integrated into the budgeting for different ministries, agencies, as well as departments, and also focusing on local government.
Yeah, thank you. We have put in place a number of strategic frameworks and mechanisms to make sure we address these critical issues, because our clarion call to the government is to make sure that we have substantial investment in education and health. And in the language of the NDP3, we call it, it's under the program called Human Capital Development. And we, as I've mentioned, our key strategic approach is to influence government policies and programs. So we do this in using a number of forums and a number of mechanisms. Of course, one, we normally try to do budget analysis and bring it out to the key stakeholders in terms of, because we are saying the demographic dividend, we have a small window of opportunity, only about 30 or 50 years. And if we miss it during the Vision 2040 framework, then we shall have a youth burden. So what we are trying to do is to advocate, and we use a number of forums, like trying to do these media engagements as we are running. We also use key events to highlight this out, like using the World Population Day. We normally focus on some specific human capital development issues or population and development issues. Also, annually, we run a publication, what we call the State of Uganda's Population Report. This is the principal or the flagship publication where we kind of reflect on how far are we moving in terms of achieving our aspirations and what are the key challenges, what do we need. So it's a very robust publication that teases out the policy issues that the government should do and other stakeholders should address, and it gives strategic guidance in terms of the country population program. So those are some of course, we also have strategic engagements. We have what we call the Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Food Security, Population and Development. We try to engage them. Then we also have where we try to engage the various committees of the parliament before the budgeting process. And then with the local governments, we are currently planning to have, they are going to have their annual general meeting. We shall have a session with them, trying to bring to them what are the key what we call demographic dividend issues that their district development plans should address.
And I believe what some of those issues could look something to the tune of early childhood marriages. You do have teenage pregnancies, then the school dropout rate in Uganda is quite disturbing, and all these are very critical to the development of the country's population. Now, in that regard, are there any things that the National Population Council is doing to directly engage perhaps local government in addressing those issues to the core?
Yeah, thank you again, Priscilla. The issue of teenage pregnancy, early child marriages, and school dropout are very grave development issues that as a country we need to confront head on. I know teenage pregnancy has been for a while. Early child marriages has also been there, but these were exacerbated by COVID-19. But what we have done, we kind of generated the evidence in terms of the teenage pregnancy and published a report. We call it the cost of inaction, teenage pregnancy in Uganda, where we looked at if we don't intervene, then the cost is that we shall not harness our demographic dividend. So as National Population Council, one of the things we did is to commission that study. Secondly, at the local government level, we undertake a lot of advocacy and capacity building activities, like we normally equip them in terms of developing their population profiles and then making sure that they are mainstream into the development, their district annual work plans. We have also built their capacities to, in terms of trying to undertake teenage pregnancy campaigns. We have in some selected districts established what we call the district teenage pregnancy prevention committees. Now these are the grassroots actors that try to drum up that support, put the messages in terms of the dangers of early pregnancies. We know these early pregnancy issues are a violation of rights, and some of these are entrenched and culturally very strong. So it's through our capacity building activities that we try to build capacities. Of course, we also, in terms of teenage pregnancies, we have the issues to do with undertaking campaigns. Yeah, we also undertake radio programs, and so on.
Okay. Mr. Omwa, time is fast spent, but in your closing remarks, could you build for us a picture, the interlinkages between the population growth and socio-economic development?
Yeah, the interlinkages between population and socio-economic development is a very strong one and a very complex one. The issue is that it's a unidirectional kind of relationship. One, a population is the population in itself influences development, and development also influences population. In terms of influencing development, if you have this working age group, appropriately skilled, very healthy, they will go into production, increase the national output, they will be innovative, entrepreneurial, and grow the GDP. Also, they provide the market base for the goods and services that the economy is churning out. But also, socio-economic development has an linkage to population. If you look at our current population structure, you'll find that the fertility rate, let's take an example of fertility rate. The fertility rate in urban areas is different from those in rural areas. Then poor households tend to have more children than educated households. So those development issues, and then you'll find that if you have those very many, then the population will increase. That's a very critical, critical issue that we need to address. And because of this complexity and the relationship, that's why we want to have these multi-stakeholder processes. And maybe before we conclude, just to bring our viewers, is that we are currently, today, we are having the official launch of the National Demographic Dividend Conference 2023. It's an inaugural conference that we organize as one of the strategies to drum support for the national, to drum support for harnessing the demographic dividend. The theme is building a competitive human capital in a world of 8 billion. And this speaks to what we have been talking here. That competitive human capital has to be skilled, has to be entrepreneurial, has to be innovative, has to be healthy. So those who have been invited, I think the opening session is now ongoing. You are most welcome to the conference.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Omwa. And of course, that is the National Population Census. At the end of the day, all this ties into just one simple thing: an informed mind is an informed decision. This brings us to the end of Morning at NTV Wednesday's edition. On behalf of Chris Igenyi and myself, Priscilla Regina Naloga, good day.